Well, duh. Well, duh. Because they're walking over by the thousands every day.
Yeah, you have to kill the families. You got to kill the kids.
Start with paying taxes.
It takes anywhere from 13 to 15 years to brainwash a society.
Trump is under the sovereignty or the sovereign hand of God.
Hillary for president.
God bless America.
You are communists. Take the American flag off.
Because I know the real deal in this country. You need to protect yourself.
I am officially running for President of the United States, and we are going to make our country great again. I would like to promise and pledge to all of my voters and supporters and to all of the people of the United States that I will totally accept the results of this great and historic presidential election if I win.
Sadly, I mean, the man does say a lot of some pretty fascist shit. He says a lot of stuff that you're like, you might want to pump the brakes on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. He preaches a lot of fascist rhetoric.
And I think the people who are calling him a fascist are the ones who've historically known best what a fascist looks like.
That's true.
Yeah, if he's not a fascist, then he needs to put some ideas forward that aren't so fascisty, right?
He's a fascist. Some say racist, misogynistic, economic failure with no foreign policy.
He supports a 21st century version of fascism, of marrying the state and capital together to benefit the few at the expense of the many, and in the process blame the other. The other is causing your problems. Let's build a wall. Let's ban Muslims. I don't believe the majority of Americans agree with him, but it's going to be about who shows up to vote.
And there have been episodes in human history, unfortunately, where these expressions of this strident rhetoric have only led to very ominous situations in the history of humanity. That's how Mussolini got in. That's how Hitler got in. They took advantage of a situation, a problem perhaps, which humanity was going through at the time after an economic crisis. And I think what they put forward ended up at what we know today from history in global conflagration.
The father of fascism studies, Robert Paxton. What do you think of Donald Trump? Is he a fascist?
Well, I think Donald Trump shows a rather alarming willingness to use fascist themes and fascist styles, which and the response this gets, the positive response, is alarming.
There is a trending retweet of yours. You retweeted somebody from Il Duce 2016. It was a Mussolini quote, but you didn't know it was Mussolini when you retweeted. It said, "It is better to live one day as a lion than 100 years as a sheep." That's a famous Mussolini quote. You retweeted it. Do you like the quote? Did you know it was Mussolini?
It's okay to know it's Mussolini. Look, Mussolini was Mussolini. It's okay to. It's a very good quote. It's a very interesting quote, and I know it. I saw it. I saw what, and I know who said it. But what difference does it make whether it's Mussolini or somebody else? It's certainly a very interesting quote.
Well,
that's probably why I have
is a
between
known
Facebook
fascist.
and Twitter 14 million people,
Do you
and
want
other
to be
people don't.
Do you want to be
it's a very
associated?
interesting quote, and people can talk about it.
You want to be associated with a fascist?
No, I want to be associated with interesting quotes. This is a dictatorship, and I'm the dictator. voting. There's no jury. Dictator. No jury. Dictator. No jury.
On July 18th, 2016, James, Jeff, and myself, Chris, embarked on a journey to Cleveland, Ohio, to observe the Republican National Convention and speak with members of the Trump movement, as well as those actively opposing them.
We did this as Canadians because we think the rise of the Trump movement and the potential of a Donald Trump presidency concerns not just America, not just America's neighbors, but the entire world.
So Chris, what do you think of Donald Trump?
Well, I'm not really a fan. Haven't heard much that would make me like him.
Not a fan of him. I think that his policies are neo-fascist and he's riding a racist, bigoted wave of support across the nation.
I think that you can't just quote Mussolini and get away with it.
As predicted here, some in the media, both left and right, are portraying Mr. Trump as a 1930s type fascist and his supporters as budding brown shirts, the Nazi Party's street army in Germany.
Mr. Trump, with some of the rhetoric you've used on the campaign trail over the last several months, targeting groups like Muslims and Mexicans, that evokes images of Nazi Germany and the scapegoating of Jews there back in the 1930s and 40s.
Well, I think that's a big stretch.
What is fascism?
Well, fascism is a mass nationalist movement intended to restore a country that's been damaged or is in decline by expansion, by violent attacks on enemies, internal as well as external enemies, and measures of authority, the replacement of democracy by an authoritarian dictator.
Is Donald Trump a fascist? To find the answer to this question, we looked to academics who had studied fascism. The most compelling work we found was by political scientist Dr. Laurence Britt, who wrote an article in 2003 called Fascism, Anyone? He studied the fascist regimes of Hitler, Germany, Mussolini, Italy, Franco, Spain, Suharto, Indonesia, and Pinochet, Chile.
Dr. Britt's finding was that all 5 regimes shared 14 characteristics. He called these the 14 identifying characteristics of fascism. We combined a few characteristics for the sake of brevity, and there was one characteristic we completely left out: fraudulent elections, because we can only speculate about such until after the election is held.
We also included a key characteristic from Robert Paxton, author of The Anatomy of Fascism.
We've been humiliated by President Obama and his policies. We've been humiliated by the Iran deal to start off with, where they get back $150 billion. We've been humiliated as a country when they took our sailors. They forced them to their knees, and the only reason we got them back is because we hadn't paid the money yet. And that's the only reason we got them back. Otherwise, they would have had to wait till I became president. Believe me, they would have come back fast. We are a country that owes $19 trillion. We lose everywhere. We lose militarily. We can't beat ISIS. Give me a break. We can't beat anybody.
Trump paints the United States as a country in decline, and this is plainly evident in his slogan. The country is no longer great, so we have to make it great again. He often talks of how America is being humiliated by other countries, namely China, Russia, and bizarrely, Mexico.
I say to myself, where is the United States doing well? So Russia and China now are unifying and they're getting together. China thinks we are truly the dumbest people on earth.
The country is doing very poorly. It just can't do much worse. We're not respected anywhere in the world.
We got countries like Russia, that's flying jets over our destroyers. I mean, flying them by, in offensive ways and everything, and nobody does anything about it. I think that will be a whole different story when Trump is president. I think that there will be a whole different air of respect for this country.
We've gone too far to the left, whether it's the laws or policies or just leftist presidents. We've kind of, there's been a shift in the culture. Millennials don't see it because they haven't really lived in it. I was kind of at the beginning of that. I was born in the early 80s, so I've seen what the country can be when it's not so crazy. Right now we're a little bit crazy.
I asked you a legitimate question. How are you oppressed? As a white male, how are you oppressed?
I have to listen to how I'm responsible for all the problems in society. Nobody said you're responsible for all the problems. That I have to listen.
Let him talk.
That I have to self-castigate myself, and that I should feel bad for the accomplishments of my ancestors. I'm sorry, folks, but I refuse to have white guilt.
So many people just, we're a grab bag right now. We're a grab bag. We're a grab bag for Mexico. We're a grab bag for, a lot of countries.
There's a lot of us that are, former our military veterans, former law enforcement. We see a problem with this country. This country's been around for over 240 years. We have a democratic process. That process is being threatened. Our way of life in this country is being threatened. We have people from foreign countries that want to destroy capitalism, that want to destroy our democratic process. They want to turn it into a globalist economy and, part of a global network. That's not how this country was designed. Most republics and democratic republics have imploded in the first 250 years throughout history. We're 240 years old. We have to be careful.
He inspires a new attitude. People to be proud to be Americans. Right now we have an attitude or an administration that Americans should go around feeling bad about being American and guilty. We've made mistakes, there's no doubt about it. But our nation has done far more good than it has bad. We need to be proud of what we've done, learn from our mistakes and do things better, but not going around apologizing all the time for the things that we've done wrong. Get on, have a vision of a future that's better than it is today and work towards a better future. And Donald Trump as a builder and as a visionary and as a courageous decision maker is the person to make that choice and to lead in that manner.
I know who these Trump supporters are because I worked alongside them for 35 years. They're disaffected white guys. These are guys that I would work next to, and as soon as the black brother stepped out of the room, you could hear it come out of them. What they want is a return to white privilege. That's their whole reason for supporting Trump.
Cowardice. Are you serious? Apologies for freedom. I can't handle this. When freedom rings, answer the call. On your feet, stand up tall. Freedom's on our shoulders. USA!
We either have a country or we don't, Sean. We have a country, we have to have borders. We have borders, we have to have laws. We either have a country or we don't, and it's that simple.
And if we don't build a wall, then there's not going to be no country left. Because what they want to do is merge Mexico with America. They want to merge China with America. And it's probably going to go beyond from there. But they want to merge these countries because they're not obviously representing us.
Nationalism is the most basic element of fascism and is utterly apparent in Trump's America First campaigning.
So why do you support Donald Trump?
He's an American hero. He stands for Americans, with Americans. We should be taking care of America first. We should be taking care of our people first.
So can you tell me why you support Donald Trump?
Immigration and foreign policy.
And what do you like about his immigration policy and his foreign policy?
We need to regulate more closely who's coming into our nation. We need to make sure they're here to benefit us, not themselves.
So can you explain this mural, or painting rather?
It's called Unafraid and Unashamed. I painted it last year, started July 9th, finished it September 28th. It took me nearly 600 hours. The original is nearly 8 feet by 16 feet in its finished frame dimensions.
And what is the message?
The message, make America great again. It's a vision of restoration. You've got the falling, torn flag over there. Once it comes under the spirit, the eagle, that's obviously it's a spiritual bird. It's restoring the country. You've got new stripes, new ink, new stars. So it's a restorative vision for the future that we have hope that our nation can be made great again.
So why do you support Donald Trump?
This is going to make America great again.
See, here's the other thing. Trump is always saying, let's make America great again. Greater than it is today. So when was that time? He's admitted it. The 1950s, right? Think of the 1950s. If you were black, you had to step off the sidewalk to let a white man by. If you disagreed with the government in front of the Senate, the House of Un-American Activities, it didn't matter what your personal rights were. You went to jail if you refused to testify. You know, all you have to do. The only good thing that came out of the 50s is Elvis Presley. Check Trump's hairstyle. That's going back to Elvis.
I have no idea the best country in the whole world was created by these white men that, yeah, well, I mean, it's just, and then they want to come over here to our country that we created this democracy where we the people we decide, thanks to our Constitution, thanks to when we came over here from the Revolution and from our country, or our continent.
Notice how the young man's father says, "Don't get into that," after his son says, "White people built this country." We expected to hear more of that kind of talk, and wondered how many Trump supporters we spoke with were actively censoring themselves. What you hear at rallies where everyone is a supporter could be quite different from what Trump supporters are willing to say when they know they are on camera.
Would you allow U.S. interrogators to waterboard terrorist prisoners in order to extract information?
Absolutely. But I'd make it also much worse. They said, what do you mean? I said, I'd do much worse. I said, they're chopping off our heads in the Middle East. They want to kill us. They want to kill us. They want to kill our country. They want to knock out our cities. And don't tell me it doesn't work. Torture works, okay, folks? Torture, you know, I have these guys. Torture doesn't work. Believe me, it works, okay?
We tried to find Trump's studies on torture, but nothing came up.
And waterboarding is your minor form. Some people say it's not actually torture. Let's assume it is. But they asked me the question, what do you think of waterboarding? Absolutely fine. But we should go much stronger than waterboarding. That's the way I feel.
Not only would he take out terrorists, he'd also go after their families. Watch this.
They care more about their families than they care about themselves.
So you're going to
Something has to be
assassinate
done.
them?
When a wife knows exactly what the husband's going to do, and the husband goes up and he knocks out 200 people with a bomb,
arrest her.
or he does the kind, I would do pretty severe stuff as far as I'm concerned.
Now, Donald Trump's approach to fighting ISIS includes bombing ISIS.
Yeah.
Possibly killing terrorist families.
He said we're gonna. Yeah, you have to kill the families. You got to kill the kids.
And bring back torture methods worse than waterboarding.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine?
That's all fine. That's all good.
Okay, so you think that will get resolved?
I think we should not care about civilian casualties, and we should just firebomb fucking towns and destroy the country. Literally destroy it. If we're gonna go in there, fucking destroy the city, dude. The ISIS-controlled city, firebomb it.
The caliphate.
Yeah.
See, the problem is, just like in Germany during World War II, the people that were there were sympathizers. Now, I'm not saying that everybody was a sympathizer, because supposedly 33% of the nation was not, right? But the other 66% are sympathizers or Nazis. And if you sympathize with somebody who's willing to blow themselves up to kill you, are you not a terrorist yourself?
Now, what do you think of Donald Trump saying he'd be willing to kill the families of
I just explained that. If you believe that it's okay for you to blow yourself up to kill infidels, then you are a terrorist, in my opinion.
Now, what about women and children?
Who was the gal in San Bernardino?
So she was female. What about children?
Okay, in Libya, there has been as young as 8-year-olds being sent to blow themselves up in suicide bombers. And there's been 56 of them this year that were under 14 and as young as 8 that went and blew themselves up. You know how many people those 56 young children killed? Over 1,000. Over 1,000. Muslims, Christians, Jews, because they're being indoctrinated with evil.
We hope it goes without saying, but children are not making the decision on their own to blow themselves up. Children do not choose their parents, nor do they choose to become suicide bombers.
And do you see something fascist in the Trump movement and in Trump supporters?
Yeah, I mean, they're complete disrespect for the rights of minorities, for the human worth of people. That's really scary.
And how do you think Trump and Trump supporters would treat the deported immigrants who were trying to stay and trying to escape deportation?
Just like any people in power treat the ones that have no power, with disgust and contempt. And I'm sure there would be human rights abuses left and right.
What do you think of Trump's comments on bringing back torture methods worse than waterboarding?
No form of advanced interrogation has ever been proven to produce any sort of productive evidence in the intelligence community as far as detaining terrorists or stopping terrorist plots. It's not been helpful at all.
And what do you think of Trump saying he'd be willing to kill the families, women and children of terrorists?
It's I understand why he would say something like that. I believe Ronald Reagan did something very similar in the 80s, but I don't feel like it's appropriate. I don't feel like you can fight fire with fire.
Remember this is for what I'm going to read. We talk about the wrong people coming into our country, right? And we can't allow it. And I love you. Look at this crowd. I love you. I mean, this is amazing. Okay, you ready? And this is called the snake. A snake. Oh, snake. Right? On her way to work one morning, down the path along the lake, a tender-hearted woman saw a poor, half-frozen snake. Her pretty colored skin had been all frosted with the dew. Oh, well, she cried, I'll take you in, and I'll take care of you. Take me in, oh tender woman. Take me in, for heaven's sake. Take me in, oh tender woman. Sighed the broken snake. She wrapped him up all cozy in a curvature of silk, and then laid him by the fireside with honey and some milk. Now she hurried home from work that night. As soon as she arrived, she found that pretty snake she'd taken in had been revived. She was happy. Take me in, oh tender woman. Take me in, for heaven's sake. Take me in, oh tender woman, sighed the broken snake. Now she clutched him to her bosom. You're so beautiful, she cried. But if I hadn't brought you in by now, heavens, you might have died. Now she stroked his pretty skin, and then she kissed him and held him tight. But instead of saying thank you, that snake gave her a vicious bite. Take me in, oh tender woman, take me in, for heaven's sake. Take me in, oh tender woman, sighed that vicious snake. I saved you, cried the woman, and you've bit me, heavens why? You know your bite is poisonous, and now I'm going to die. Oh, shut up, silly woman, said the reptile with a grin. You knew damn well I was a snake before you took me in. Right? Right?
How do you think he's going to make America great again?
Well, he tells you he's not shy about it. He's going to build a wall. He's going to stop illegal immigration. He's going to stop Muslims from coming into the country. We're going to quit taking refugees. He's going to renegotiate our trade deals with China. He's going to make America great again.
Trump's demonization of immigrants diverts attention from the real causes of economic inequality that Trump himself benefits from.
His discrimination against Muslims to me is very ignorant and very misguided, because discrimination against an entire religious group is how we've started every world war and major conflict that the world has ever known is discriminating against. There are literally 1.6 billion Muslims in the world, and less than a fraction of a percent of them are extremists of any form, which is actually statistically less than any other major faith group. For me, it's terrifying that he would be prejudiced against an extraordinarily huge group of people in the world.
I think for me it's hard to figure out who Donald Trump actually likes, because every week he goes on the news picking out a different segment of our population and saying these people are bad and we don't like these people for this reason. We don't like this ethnic group because of this, and we don't like this religious group because of that. So it really is hard to figure out who Donald Trump likes besides white people like us.
All lives matter except for these folks. And sadly, at some time, these folks won't matter. And they feel like they need help. So I'm letting them know they matter.
Trump has altered the Muslim ban to, quote-unquote, extreme vetting. But you can't put it past Trump to go ahead with the original Muslim ban, and his base would demand he keep that promise if elected.
I had a wonderful conversation earlier today with a woman that immigrated here 45 years ago, and she's a Muslim. And she said she's lived here for 45 years in peace until now. Never in 45 years has she been afraid to be in America until now. She doesn't even use her burqa anymore. It's sad, you know? It's so sad. She's been here almost as long as I've been alive. She has just as many rights to this country as I do. And to be afraid in your own country is just, it's wrong.
Do you think there are any parallels to historical fascism with the proposed ban on Muslims entering the country, visibly identifying Muslims,
How can you not relate that to, I mean, I know everybody goes to the Hitler thing, but this time it's real. I mean, they've always gone to Hitler this, Hitler that, you know, whatever. But this time it's real. How can you not relate that to Hitler starting off small with things about Jewish people, like marking them, marking Jewish businesses, subjecting them to searches, then putting them into the ghettos, and then it's step by step. So right now we're just identifying Muslims. We're searching mosques. Well, we're not, but this is what he wants to do. You know, identify Muslims, search mosques, and then what? Oh, and then we put them into the ghettos or that special housing. I'm sure in his words would be best housing ever, best, you know. And then where do we take it from there? You know, it's what we did in World War II to the Japanese was wrong. You know.
Now, what would you say to Trump supporters carrying All Lives Matter signs and Blue Lives Matter signs?
I agree with those signs. All lives do matter, but all lives are not in the same position as African Americans in the United States of America. Because of the color of my skin. Pretty much. That's it. All lives matter, but all lives aren't being attacked and murdered and shot on the streets. My people are. African Americans, my babies, my children. I gotta go to their funerals before they graduate high school. All lives matter, but they're not the ones being murdered and brutalized and killed by police officers and the system.
And do you think Trump supporters have a hard time understanding that?
I think they have a real hard time understanding because they've done nothing about it. And every other president and candidate has done nothing about it. We talk about it, but the prison population remains the same. The rules for whites is different from the rules for blacks. The laws for blacks and the laws for whites in this country are totally divided. White folks get one law, black folks get another law.
I'm here to protest the selection of Donald Trump as the Republican candidate. I think he represents dangerous views. The Trump name was the family name before they moved to America and changed it to Trump. I think the Germanic origins point to some fascist thinking that may have been latent in the family genes, and that's why we see him today attacking immigrants and others that are different from himself, with the kind of hatred and bigotry that has made him a national disgrace. I'm here to support Clinton. She wasn't my first choice. I was the Bernie guy, but I've switched over and I'm voting. I voted my heart with Bernie. I'm voting my head with Hillary. And that's the story of the Trump sign.
Now, which element of the Trump campaign do you think is the most alarmingly similar to previous fascist regimes?
Well, first off is the hatred of foreigners. That's central to the fascists in 1933 and their rise to power, was fear of all things foreign.
Do you think there's any group in particular that to Trump would be what were the Jews to Hitler?
Well, I think any foreigner, I think he would treat the Mexican illegals or the Hispanic illegals. I think his fear of Muslims and his lack of understanding there, I think there are a number of people he would give that treatment to. This guy's talking about 10 million human beings loaded up on trains or planes and then thrown out of the country. That sort of thing is so unsettling, it's frightening.
Are you worried about Sharia law in the United States?
It's already here.
It's already here. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Well, there was a case in New York City where a man beheaded his wife, and he never served a day in jail. And I feel that, you know, if you're going to come to this country, you should respect, you know, what this country's about. And Sharia law is not part of our Constitution.
We Googled Sharia law in America and found no case of U.S. courts saying it's okay to behead your wife.
So can you explain your sign?
Yeah, it's meant to be like politically provocative. It's meant to make people think kind of about what Trump represents, what he's about.
And so you're making a parallel between Trump and the Trump campaign and the Trump movement and Nazism. What do you think? What do you think are similar about the two?
The way that he talks about mass deportation of ethnical groups, ethnical sort of cleansing, the way he puts down immigrants and talks about them being murderers and rapists, things like that. A lot of stuff that Hitler said was very similar.
Do you think there's any particular group that would be to Trump what the Jews were to Hitler?
The Muslims, immigrants in general, really, but in particular Muslims.
Can you explain your sign, please?
Sure. It says Jews reject Trump. We've seen this before. It's from Bend the Arc Jewish Action, which is a Jewish social justice organization, which feels strongly, as do I, that as Jews we have an obligation to stand up against oppression, racism, hatred, and particularly hatred against people based on their religion, which of course Donald Trump stands for. We see some stark comparisons and parallels between the rise of Donald Trump and the rise of Adolf Hitler in Nazi Germany, and we feel obligated that when we said never again, we meant never again for anybody.
Now, do you feel there's one particular group that to Trump are what the Jews were to Hitler?
I particularly think of the Muslims, just because he's so openly and vitriolically, is that a word, against Islam. But you could certainly make an argument that, because he hates an awful lot of people. He hates immigrants, he hates Mexicans, and I just don't see that ending well for anybody. The level of rhetoric that goes on in a Trump speech is stuff that we haven't seen in quote-unquote polite society in a very long time, and part of why I'm here is to raise my voice and say that it's not okay. We can't stop people from being hateful in their hearts, but we can stop it from being socially acceptable.
We need to block the Muslims from coming to this country, especially from Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan.
And would that include all Muslims or ISIS Muslims?
All Muslims for 6 months, a year, something like that, until we figure out, okay, who do we really need to stop here?
So
which group of Muslims?
Muslims and not
that. Well, that's you're gonna take. It's
how
gonna
do
take
you
a year.
vouch for them?
I don't know. That's not my job, bro. I'm half Palestinian, dude. Half my family's Muslim. And then you can rewind it and just watch all the shit I just said, because it's the truth, man.
She's got a good point, guys.
I am going to give us some white paint. Please, can I be yeah, you're right. You're right. You hear what he said? If you're born white, you can do whatever you want.
No.
Yes. It's coming from him.
Paying taxes.
He just said it.
Taking care of our children?
Yep.
Okay.
Come on, just be honest. Stop using Trump to breed hate. Trump has nothing to do with God.
Many white Trump supporters feel threatened by changing demographics and losing their majority status in the United States.
To the black man, look, he got a gun on him.
Ignorant.
Why are you carrying a gun?
Because I'm not ignorant. I know the real deal. Because I know the real deal in this country. You need to protect yourself.
You're
giving this guy too much credence.
So why a black man can't carry a gun? Man, come on, man. Look at him. He called his own kind of white haters. Look, there you go. Get out of here. Get out of here.
Hey, sweetheart.
Get out of here. Listen, I'm not for, I was for Bernie. But we got blacks on. So us as African Americans, we have no choice but to vote for Hillary, because the hell, we're not going to have Trump get in. Period.
Everybody come on now. If I can get you to fear, I can get you to hate. If I get you to hate, then you won't think straight. If you don't think straight, you'll be played for a chump, and then you wind up with Trump. Everybody, if I get you to fear, I can get you to hate. If I get you to hate, then you won't think straight. If you don't think straight, you'll be played for a chump, and then you wind up with Trump.
We're going to build up our military. We're going to have such a strong military that nobody is going to mess with us. We're not going to have to use it.
Can you tell the Middle East we're not using a nuclear weapon?
I would never say that. I would never take any of my cards off the table.
How about Europe? We won't use it in Europe.
I'm not going to take it off the table.
You might use it in Europe?
No, I don't think so. But
well,
I'm not
just
taking,
say it. I'll never use a nuclear weapon in Europe.
I am not taking cards off the table. I'm not going to use nukes, but I'm not taking any cards off the table.
The trouble is that the sane people hear you, and the insane people are not affected by your threats. That's the trouble. The real fanatics say, good, keep it up.
I think they're more affected than you might think.
Now, Donald Trump has said he wouldn't rule out the use of a nuclear weapon in the Middle East.
Right.
Do you think, can you imagine any circumstances in which a nuclear weapon should be used in the Middle East?
Yeah, I can imagine it.
Yeah.
Well, can you imagine when we should use one in Japan? Well, yeah, they had kamikaze pilots crashing their planes into our ships. We nuke Hiroshima, they quit the kamikaze flights. Did you know that?
So maybe a nuclear weapon to defeat ISIS.
Well, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. It's a scourge that that the world has to get rid of. We have to get rid of that.
And you think Donald Trump is certainly the best person to defeat ISIS?
The only one I know that wants to do it and that maybe can do it. I don't know if he can do it. He might fall on his face. I don't know. But I mean, I've got hope, and he's the only one that's convinced me that he might. I supported him since he first announced.
There is absolutely no reason for the United States to use a nuclear weapon in the Middle East, because no one has nuclear weapons in the Middle East except for Israel, America's ally.
So, Donald Trump has talked about bombing ISIS.
Yes.
He's also said he wouldn't rule out the use of a nuclear weapon in the Middle East. Do you think that's a good approach or a bad approach?
Well, we have what's called a Moab. It's the mother of all bombs. It blows up twice as powerful as Hiroshima or Nagasaki, yet is non-nuclear. So basically, you could use that instead of a nuke, and then you could still go in and change the society.
Several months ago, a foreign policy expert on the international level went to advise Donald Trump, and 3 times he asked about the use of nuclear weapons. 3 times he asked, at one point, if we have them, why can't we use them? That's one of the reasons why he just doesn't have foreign policy experts around.
Trump asked 3 times.
3 times in an hour briefing, why can't we use nuclear weapons? With that.
Be careful, America, and be careful, Republican leaders.
So, General Hayden,
your party is blowing up.
I want to ask one more time, and and it may be classified, but the steps. Donald Trump decides to use a nuclear weapon. what is the time frame between his decision and when the nuclear weapons are launched?
Joe, it's scenario dependent, but the system is designed for speed and decisiveness. It's not designed to debate the decision.
Given all of Trump's comments on nuclear weapons, no potential president in history has been more likely to launch a full-scale nuclear assault.
Are you concerned about Trump having the codes to the nuclear weapons?
Extremely concerned, yes. Trump preaches a rhetoric of fear and of hatred and of extremism. He is an extremist himself, and he talks about bombing the hell out of ISIS, which personally terrifies me. We cannot fight violence with violence. There is no way we will ever combat forces of extremism and violence in the world by bombing the hell out of anybody. That is not diplomacy, and that is not what America stands for. So I'm terrified that he will lead us not only into more war, but he will create more violence, more extremism in the world.
Are you worried about Trump having the nuclear launch codes?
I wasn't joking when, I know every election people, I'll leave. My God, so many people told me they would leave if Obama became president. They're still here. I am not joking. I don't even think Canada would be far enough because nuclear fallout and everything else.
His dependence on military solutions and violence to solve problems is very much an aspect of fascism, the militarism of the country in order to achieve what it determines are its goals. I think he shows a willingness to use military power to gain whatever he thinks is worthy for his presidency. And I think that's very dangerous for a man in his position.
On the note of the military, Donald Trump has repeatedly said that the American military is currently weak relative to other countries right now. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think probably they need to institute the draft again.
The draft? Yeah. To fight ISIS?
Just to have a draft, like we used to. Everybody maybe from the ages of 18 to 24 have to serve 2 or 3 years.
What do you think of Donald Trump's military foreign policy?
Misguided.
Yeah, right. I mean, he said he reads books and things about it, right? It's a really interesting.
He consults himself.
Yeah.
He literally consults himself on foreign policy.
So I think Donald Trump is yet to remain, right? If he becomes president, we'll see and learn more about what he actually has to say, and I really hope it doesn't get to that place. But what I do know is that the hate he espouses has perpetuated violence in our own communities, in his very own rallies, for example, and that this is inevitably going to result in a lot more violence on a global scale if he does take that chair. And I do want to say that Hillary Clinton is no saint. She has a long history of being a war hawk and a warmonger. We have a track record in Iraq, Libya, and Honduras of her decisions resulting in death and unnecessary violence.
What are your thoughts on your military budget? Should it be increased, or is it fine the way it is?
It needs to stop going up every time. Why would it go? Why does it need to go up?
Well, Donald Trump has said he wants to increase the military budget.
I don't care about that, though. So, I don't really care. I'm joining the Army as soon as I leave here. So, you want to, I'm done. Like I'm saying, I just want to make sure I got a president, commander-in-chief that's going to back me.
Mr. Trump, one of the things people love about you is you speak your mind and you don't use a politician's filter. However, that is not without its downsides, in particular when it comes to women. You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
No, it wasn't. Your Twitter account
Thank you.
For the record, it was well beyond Rosie O'Donnell.
Yes, I'm sure it was.
Your Twitter account has several disparaging comments about women's looks. You once told a contestant on Celebrity Apprentice it would be a pretty picture to see her on her knees. Does that sound to you like the temperament of a man we should elect as president? And how will you answer the charge from Hillary Clinton, who is likely to be the Democratic nominee, that you are part of the war on women?
I think the big problem this country has is being politically correct. And frankly, what I say, and oftentimes it's fun, it's kidding, we have a good time, what I say is what I say. And honestly, Megyn, if you don't like it, I'm sorry. I've been very nice to you, although I could probably maybe not be based on the way you have treated me, but I wouldn't do that.
Well, Rosie O'Donnell's disgusting. I mean, both inside and out. When you look at her and when you see the mind is weak. I don't see it. I don't get it. I never understood. How does she even get on television? If I were running The View, I'd fire Rosie. I mean, I'd look her right in that fat, ugly face of hers. I'd say, Rosie, you're fired. Rosie's a person that's very lucky to have her girlfriend. And she better be careful or I'll send one of my friends over to pick up her girlfriend. Why would she stay with Rosie if she had another choice? I'd like to take some money out of her fat ass pockets.
But what is it with you and Megyn Kelly?
Well, I just don't respect her as a journalist. I have no respect for her. I don't think she's very good. I think she's highly overrated. So I have, she gets out and she starts asking me all sorts of ridiculous questions. And, you could see there was blood coming out of her eyes. Blood coming out of her wherever.
In an interview last week in Rolling Stone magazine, Donald Trump said the following about you, quote, "Look at that face. Would anyone vote for that? Can you imagine that, the face of our next president?"
He appears to be a good father, but if you're a good father, okay, you're going to go through a divorce. A lot of good fathers and mothers have gone through divorces. They don't leak best sex I ever had stories to be plastered all over the tabloids while their 13-year-old son is going to school.
Explain what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, that's, Donald milked the divorce, the breakup with part of his shtick. One of the reasons white males love him so much in this campaign is they think he's a stud, right? I mean, Marla Maples was a beauty, classic American beauty, So the whole thing that he fed during that divorce, which was
his divorce with
Ivana, yes, was just so incredibly ugly, and it was damaging to the children. And then he got into a fight with Ivana over who gets what in the end, and he wanted Eric's computer. They fought over Eric's computer, right? Yes, I mean, and so his treatment of Ivana, the mother of his first three children, was just deplorable. And then Marla already has the child before they get married, right? And so when he breaks up with her, she signs a confidentiality agreement. So, the two of them, their lips are sealed. But when she thought he was running for president in 2011, she was doing an interview in Britain, in London. And she said, if he runs for president, I'm going to have to tell the world what he's really like. And Trump's lawyers go immediately into court, and then they actually stood out after they got some sort of a order from the court, and she's completely silenced, and we'll never hear from her again. They actually stood in front of the courthouse and said she had proven that she was a bimbo. That's what they said. So, I mean, the way in which he has treated his wives is just, it's really deplorable.
To mention the Access Hollywood leak, the locker room talk, or lewd language as much of the mainstream media has covered it, is missing the point entirely. Trump confessed to using his celebrity status to serially sexually abuse women. Full stop. It's that simple.
And I noticed your shirt says feminism is a cancer. Could you explain? Is cancer. Could you explain that a little bit?
Feminism poisons everything that it touches. Feminism was important in the 50s and a long time ago when women didn't maybe have the same rights. Now I think it's been hijacked. And look up Milo Yiannopoulos. He could probably go into more detail. He's holding the most dangerous faggot tours right now across America. So check him out. Right now, we're focused on the wrong things. Gender equality, LGBT, whatever. That's all great. but I don't think we're focusing on the right issues.
Can you explain a bit about your sign?
So yeah, I just think that, you know, some of the things like he said about Rosie O'Donnell, that she's a fat pig, that women look better on their knees. I mean, that's something coming from a man who is just, he feels like he's so entitled to women, and I don't like that. I don't like that that's what he wants to, you know, represent when he gets elected candidate. So if he gets elected candidate, hopefully that doesn't happen. Oh my God, that would be a sad, sad day. But yeah, I just don't think that that's called for in a candidate that's running for the presidency. That's really disgusting.
What would you say to women who are considering voting for him?
I think that they really need to look out for their fellow women and be feminists with the rest of us, because they're really not, they don't really care about other women. I think that, you know, if they're voting for all of the things that he has to say, they're really, I mean, he means it. A lot of people that I've talked to say, oh, he doesn't really mean it. No, he means it. If it comes out of his mouth, he means that stuff. So I really don't think that he's making this up and he's just saying just stuff to get a reaction. He means this, so.
Clinton is a deeply flawed nominee for very legitimate reasons, but many Trump supporters appear unable to articulate criticisms of her policy.
Whatever your opinion of Hillary Clinton, if you've ever had doubts about the level of misogyny in the Trump movement, just look at the way they talk about the first female major party presidential nominee.
To get her ass spanked.
And then they said, you know, he's killed reporters. And I don't like that. I'm totally against that. By the way, I hate some of these people, but I'd never kill them. I hate them. No, I think, no, these people, honestly, I'll be honest. I would never kill them. I would never do that. Let's see. No, I wouldn't. I would never kill them. But I do hate them, and some of them are such lying, disgusting people. It's true. It's true. It's true. Do we like the media? Do we hate the media?
Okay. And it's very important as Americans that we protect our freedoms. I talk to people from all over the world. I talked to people in China. I asked them what they thought about Trump. They told me they're not allowed to tell me, that they don't have the freedom to criticize their government. I talked to people in Germany. They said there's things you can't say in Germany or you go to jail. Like I said, if you deny the Holocaust, you go to jail. I believe the Holocaust happened, but I believe you should have the right to free speech and freedom to think what you want.
Freedom of the press. Donald Trump has said that he wants to open up the libel laws.
Yeah.
So to make it easier to sue journalists.
Well, who libel? Who print things knowingly that aren't true? Yeah.
So you think that would still fall under freedom of the press?
Well, free speech isn't about lies. You know, if I'm going to sit there and say, you know, you're a rapist, you're a racist, that's not true. And to put that in print, it's going to influence people to think that way. It could ruin your reputation. And so that's what he's saying, you know, like Gawker, the stuff they did to Hulk Hogan, okay? That's taken a little far. It's not really freedom of speech to go out and make lies to destroy someone's livelihood. I can't really support that. I think Trump's right. People who argue that issue, I don't really know what their stance is. You know.
Donald Trump is defending his move to take away press credentials from the, quote, dishonest Washington Post.
I said, why should I have people following me around, sitting up there like big shots, and they write very untruthful stories. They write very untruthful stories.
The Washington Post joins a growing list of news organizations Trump has banned. Others include Politico, the Des Moines Register, BuzzFeed, the Daily Beast, and the Huffington Post. Trump campaign officials say the Post covers the billionaire, quote, very inaccurately. But the presumptive Republican nominee insists he won't ban the press from the White House briefing room if he becomes president.
When you think about the times that he's attacked the media, there's often been another major story of the day that he's eager to see drop out of the headlines. Take, for example, when he held his press conference to talk about what exactly he did with charity donations to different veterans committees. I mean, during that press conference, he was highly defensive and turned in a very personal attack-style way on the reporters covering the event. And that, in a way, took away from the major storyline of, people asking questions about where that money went to with the veterans groups.
This is another troubling aspect of the Trump campaign that has been ironically underreported by the media. The press is supposed to fulfill an essential role in any democracy by holding the government accountable to the people.
In the presidential campaign season, the press needs to vet candidates as thoroughly as possible so that the electorate can make an informed decision.
By trying to prevent unfavorable news outlets from covering his campaign, Trump shows his complete disregard for the First Amendment and freedom of the press. Cracking down on the press is a telltale sign of fascism.
It's interesting. On the front page of the New York Times this morning, Mr. Trump, legal experts say the administration appeared to flub the case. Why didn't they revoke his passport after the charges were filed? Because they essentially had the chance to freeze him in place, and they didn't do it. They dropped the ball on this.
Well, maybe they thought it wasn't politically correct. Spies in the old days used to be executed.
Can you imagine how Trump would deal with whistleblowers?
I mean, think about just recently this $10 million lawsuit because somebody, in his mind, broke a contract, the no disclosure thing, but also apparently in all his contracts, he has a clause that anybody that works for him or whatever has to sign that say they can't say anything bad about him. What is that? I mean, and then when asked if he would bring that to the White House, he said, sure, probably. Well, if that's not a dictator, I don't know what is. To say, you can't say anything bad about me. We might as well move to North Korea. I mean, it's that. Maybe I'm blowing it out of proportion, I don't know, but I really don't think I am. If you say to somebody, you can't say anything bad about them, I almost made a sign, I know it's a little silly, I thought about it last night, that said, insult my hair and I'll push the button. Because I kind of feel like that's the position we're in. Like, don't say anything to make me mad or I'm going to get retribution. That's not a president. That's not even a person that should run a company.
What do you think of Trump opening up the libel laws to make it possible to sue journalists who are critical of him?
It's a complete violation of our constitutional rights. I disagree with that entirely. It's dictatorish.
In the same manner in which Trump tries to silence the media, he also attempts to silence civilian dissent, most notably encouraging violence towards protesters at his rallies.
Bye-bye. Look, see, he's smiling. See, he's having a good time. I love the old days, You know what I hate? There's a guy totally disruptive, throwing punches. We're not allowed to punch back anymore. I love the old days. You know what they used to do to guys like that when they were in a place like this? They'd be carried out on a stretcher, folks. That's true. I love our police, and I really respect our police, and they're not getting enough. They're not. But honestly, I hate to see that. Here's a guy throwing punches, nasty as hell, screaming and everything else when we're talking. And he's walking out, and we're not allowed, the guards are very gentle with him. He's walking out like big high fives, smiling, laughing. Like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
Now, what do you think about Black Lives Matter activists being kicked out of Trump rallies by angry Trump supporters?
I don't think anybody has a right to do that, because now you're messing with the First Amendment. I need my right of free speech, right? You're messing with the Constitution here. And I think you have an opinion, and you can voice your opinion. This is the land of the free and the home of the brave. I can say I don't like you anywhere as long as I don't put my hands on you. You don't have the right to put me out anywhere as long as I'm being respectful and orderly, and I can say Black Lives Matter just like I can say I'm pissed off. But that you don't have the right to kick me out of the rally, so I'm dead against that, because I wouldn't stop anybody from protesting, not even the Ku Klux Klan. You got the right to say what you want to say, but you don't have the right to do what you want to do.
And what do you think of Trump talking about opening up the libel laws so that he could sue journalists who criticize him.
Everything is about Trump. Everything's for his own benefit. He is so thin-skinned and weak that he is afraid of everything and everybody that says a mean tweet about him. And opening up the libel laws, it's completely un-American. That's free speech. That's our First Amendment right. But I don't think not only does he not have a grasp of the First Amendment, I don't think he knows what the First Amendment actually says. So I'm not surprised that he feels like he could just, quiet any dissent, just like in any dictatorship and any fascism.
What are your thoughts on Trump being so close to Roy Cohn? And,
you got that right, buddy. Roy Cohn and he were apparently, from what I've heard, like that. He was the architect behind the McCarthy and Army hearings. He was the guy that brought us down to this house of un-American activities. He's a guy that you want to stay off his radar.
I think he's a master at using the media, and the media is very willing to comply. And he's not as stupid as he looks. You should take it very seriously. He knows the manipulation that's going on here, and the use of propaganda, and the way he's doing it is just brilliant in the sense that he has succeeded and has succeeded. 17 other candidates couldn't find a way to bring him down. 17 others.
We've got problems. If we don't get tough, and if we don't get smart and fast, we're not going to have our country anymore. There will be nothing, absolutely nothing left.
He'll quickly cut the head off ISIS and take their oil. And he'll stop illegal immigration by building a wall on our southern border that Mexico will pay for.
PolitiFact, which of course is the organization that tries to keep candidates honest, that's what they do full time, they just published something that the portion that you just talked about of the ad that is supposed to show immigration, it says, you see there, it just says stop illegal immigration, where the narrator talks about building a wall at the southern border. Turns out that particular picture is from Morocco. It is from the beginning of, May of 2014, when about 800 people or so tried to get from Morocco in Africa into Spain.
Not only does Trump grossly exaggerate the dangers of illegal immigration to America's national security, but he uses blatant falsehoods to stoke these fears.
You said that earlier you said we're not focusing on the right issues anymore. What issues do you think are the ones we need to focus on right now?
Security. So, Donald Trump says we don't have a border. It's true, we don't have a border. And, people talk about, we should be open borders, we should bring everybody in. Well, look at the southern Mexico border. They have a wall to keep South Americans out. It's for a reason. So security is important.
Immigration is also a hugely critical issue that's facing the West right now. All you have to do is look at Europe. And I think he's the only man or woman, I suppose, but only man in the race right now with the ideas that are strong and sound enough and the will to actually enact them to achieve any functional change.
So you think, why do you think the wall is necessary?
Well, because they're walking over by the thousands every day.
And as far as banning Muslims, why do you think banning Muslims entering the country is necessary?
Well, because they keep cutting people's heads off and blowing buildings up, and
And so what do you think is the greatest threat to America right now?
Radical Islam. Yeah. As soon as they get a nuke, they're going to use it.
What do you think of Trump's proposed ban on Muslims entering the country?
I think he's evolved that whole stance over since the initial shock factor of him saying that. Now it's Syrians and people from certain areas of the world. I think we should be looking at where people are coming before they come into the country. We don't just let anybody in. Who knows where they got their passport from? Who knows what they've been doing? We should monitor the people that are coming into the country, because you look at what's happening in Europe right now, in France and Germany and Sweden. Sweden's now the rape capital of the world. There's something to be said there. So we should look at the people that are living in the country.
People think that's such a huge issue. I think the most ridiculous part is the slander these people are getting. That, you know, it's like, it's only rapists and thieves coming over. Are you kidding me? How are you seriously going to believe it's only rapists and thieves? They only want to, it's such a weird idealism to say that we need to build a wall, the rapists and thieves and, you know, murderers are going to get in. It's like, we have that here. We have plenty of that here. We don't, you know, you're scared because someone's saying Mexico is the issue. We have plenty of that here. The rape statistics are here, the murder statistics are here, and you're going to blame this one group of people.
I do like he has said, first thing he's going to do if he's elected is he's going to go to Congress and ask for a declaration of war on ISIS. So it is congressionally approved, and the nation is at a state of war, which brings in a whole different set of laws and penalties and course of action we can take on this enemy.
Do you think declaring war on ISIS could lead to more attacks from ISIS on Americans?
Maybe, but the thing is the response will be instant, many times heavier, harder, and we're going to send those rats running looking for a hole.
Your values of love, charity, and faith built this nation. So how can it be that our media treats people of faith so poorly? One of the reasons is that our politicians have really abandoned you to a large extent. And Hillary Clinton, you can forget about her. So let me state this right up front. A Trump administration, our Christian heritage, will be cherished, protected, defended like you've never seen before. You know, I'm leading with the evangelicals. I'm a good Christian, and I'm leading with the evangelicals. And I want to tell you something. Christianity, and I put it in the same vein and sometimes in the same sentences, Christianity is being chipped away at in this country. In this country. It's being chipped away at. And I'm not going to let it happen. Do you know,
I've been telling people, as I've felt more lately, that I believe this guy's ordained of God right now for our country. Isn't it ironic that a billionaire has to give the vote back to the people because he brings his own money to the table?
Once that vision, once it comes back under the wings of the eagle, you see it being restored. It's all new stripes, new ink, but the composition runs this way, but it runs this way as the light from the rising white sun in the east is casting a shadow on the wings of the eagle on the back of Donald Trump's head. This shadow, which is partial, showing that Trump is under the sovereignty or the sovereign hand of God, that Trump is God's chosen for this election cycle. There is no doubt in my mind that he's the one that is being used to bring back sanity to our nation.
The Lord gave me a word for Donald Trump. I don't know how I'll get it to him, but maybe you can. In the dream, he was driving me to my parents' house in Youngstown. They're very wealthy, my parents. And in the dream, I was sitting in the passenger seat, and I looked at him and I said, the Lord says that if you get into office and you oppress the poor people, God will judge you severely. And he cringed and he looked at the steering wheel. And then I woke up. And then I had a vision that was pertaining to Hillary. And in the vision, she was talking all flamboyantly, like bobbing herself all around and very promiscuous looking, right? And there was a huge nuclear warhead pointed at her. And it was just going like that, like every time she was moving, and and she was full of fear. That's all the Lord gave me. I can't go beyond what he gives me. I have to say only what he tells me to say.
So based on your two visions of Hillary and Trump, who do you think is the better vessel for God?
Honestly, Donald Trump.
Trump is clearly not a devout Christian, but Mike Pence was chosen to cement him as the voice of the religious right and gather Christian support, which gives him credibility with the Republican base.
Trump have a good history as a good Christian?
I've heard his vice presidential candidate is a born-again Christian. I hope that's true. I heard he's born again.
Revelations 3, chapter 3, verse 9. Those who say that they are Jews, but they do lie, are of the synagogue of Satan. And what that's saying is, Islamists believe that they are the sons of Ishmael, which is one of the sons of Jacob. So they are thus Jews, but they do lie. Check that out. That's all I'm saying.
Fascism confuses a lot of people because at the very beginning, when it was a handful of disgruntled veterans, it sounded quite radical. But when it's in power, it allies with banks, industrialists, the army, churches, and so forth. And so it changes as it comes close to power, and it makes the bid for power. There's an opportunist adjustment whereby it gets along with the hated conservatives.
Donald Trump is an alleged billionaire who is obsessed with his wealth and brags about being a billionaire incessantly. Ask yourself, why wouldn't he protect corporate power when corporate power protects him? Trump has no interest in actively diminishing his own fortune through progressive tax policy.
Go back to why he doesn't have to pay taxes?
Because if Donald is anywhere near as wealthy as he claims to be, and Donald has acknowledged under oath that he basically makes up numbers that make him look good, if he has enough depreciation from his buildings, he is allowed to use that to offset income from the other things like selling ties made in China and running golf courses. And that means that he effectively can get a zero interest loan from the government of his taxes. In my USA Today column back in March, I showed how if Trump's numbers that he's publicly said were true, then he stands to make about $130 million net profit off his income taxes from a single year. The taxes would have only been $23 million.
We turn now to look at a new USA Today expose that found hundreds of former employees and contractors have accused Donald Trump and his businesses of failing to pay them for their work. Victims have included a dishwasher in Florida, a glass company in New Jersey, a carpet company, a plumber, 48 waiters, dozens of bartenders at his resorts and clubs, and even several law firms that once represented him in these labor lawsuits. And you also talk about Trump's companies having been cited for 24 violations of the Fair Labor Standards Act since 2005 for failing to pay overtime or minimum wage, according to the U.S. Department of Labor data. Can you talk about what you found there?
Exactly. Those are, since 2005, disputes over back wages and overtime and minimum wage. And Trump was had to resolve those cases by paying back wages in both cases to some of his hourly employees at Trump Mortgage and one of his casinos.
Trump continues to pound on this on the campaign trail, says he'd kill the TPP, says that he would renegotiate NAFTA. Are you concerned that some of your members may be swayed by this, and is there an education process that you have to go through with union folk in this country to make sure that he doesn't grab the lion's share of that vote?
That's the exact right question, because what we need to do is bring education to our membership about him and his track record. You know, Ed, let me just say this. When his daughter spoke at the Republican convention, the very next morning, the dress she wore that night was on sale on the internet. That dress was made in Bangladesh or in El Salvador, and right away, this is not the guy that's going to be standing up for workers. He has no record of standing up for workers ever. You look at his clothing line, you look at all the things he's done, they've all been made in low-wage countries. We went into a hotel and checked the material in the hotel, whether it was dressers, whether it was lamps, whether it was things. A Trump hotel had every piece of that hotel room with imported goods from China, India, Bangladesh, El Salvador.
So
I have nothing against those workers. I have nothing against those workers in those countries. Well, they're trying to make a living.
To renegotiate NAFTA, is that even possible?
No, it takes three parties to do it, and he's not going to do it. And furthermore, he has no intentions of doing it, Ed. It's part of the Trump game. It's part of his hypocrisy. If he wanted to show that he was going to stand up for workers and get things made in America, he should have quit making his clothing line in Bangladesh and in India and El Salvador and brought it to America. Same thing with the stuff we found in his hotel room. He's a phony.
How is Trump going to make America better? He's never been poor to even know how somebody poor feels. His father gave him $1 million. How many people your father gave you $1 million? No. We had to get it out the mud, right? We had to work hard for it, right? Everything was given to him. He could never be my president.
He's gotten more votes than any other Republican in history in terms of the primaries, so he's doing something right. I think part of it is his aggressiveness, his clarity, the fact that he speaks at the fourth grade level so that every American can understand him with a simplicity and a directness that's very powerful.
That his ally, Newt Gingrich, claims that Trump speaking at a fourth grade level is a selling point is quite remarkable, given that fourth graders can't vote.
There's even an element of anti-intellectualism in this, where Americans, a certain number of them, revel in Trump's efforts to put down thoughtful people and to shut them up. So there's a reactionary, strange dynamic that's taken hold, and for Trump it's very profitable.
This anti-intellectualism.
Well,
that is what's taken over the party. This sort of it's almost as, there's almost a disdain with some in Trump world. They're like, yeah, okay, so the college-educated crowd isn't for it. There's almost a disdain that they're embracing about this, but it is hurting the party.
Now, what do you mean when you say the silent party?
People that are sick and tired of being sick and tired of what our country has turned into.
And which particular groups do you think have been silenced?
Baby boomers.
Baby boomers?
And the products of baby boomers, I would say probably 50-50 are that didn't go to college and get brainwashed. It takes anywhere from 13 to 15 years to brainwash a society.
I think there's an excellent chance of Donald Trump becoming the next president of the United States. People need to take that very seriously. I said last August he would be the Republican nominee. He knows something. He knows how to manipulate a dumbed-down population, a population whose schools have been wrecked, whose media is just insipid and stupid and doesn't give people the facts about what's going on. So the public is easily manipulated by somebody like him.
We won with poorly educated. I love the poorly educated.
I am the law and order candidate.
He's not a criminal. He speaks the truth. He's not politically correct. He wants to uphold the law. It's all good things in my book.
Oh, why do you support Donald Trump?
He represents a change in the right direction, I believe. Leadership matters. And the leadership that puts forth that a group like Black Lives Matter and that it's actually okay to kill police is wrong. I live in Phoenix. I went to 2 of Trump's rallies while you were there. The vast majority of Trump supporters are, what I see on the rallies, white, middle class, and I'm not saying there's not a diversity of races, but
has divided this country so
I'm saying the vast majority of the people that I saw there were polite. Wanted to see their candidate, or at least hear what he had to say.
I don't know what I said. I don't remember.
And the violence was caused by the more radical left-wing disruptors. Just like you see here, you've got the anarchist types that are running around and jackboot stomping through the crowd and causing problems. So You show me a Trump supporter that is going to, if we get punched or we're certainly being impeded, in some way, are we liable to push back? Yeah. I'm not going to take any crap from some kid that thinks that he somehow knows something more than I do. Let me go my way.
There's an implication here that protest and civil disobedience is a crime that should be punished.
Block my freeway, prevent me from going where I want to go? No, sorry.
Donald has done a very good job of trying to keep a number of things out of the public record and shut down investigations, but I found 2 tax appeals he filed from the year 1984, one with the city of New York and one with the state. And in one of these 2 cases, Donald filed something called a Schedule C. That's what a freelancer files. He reported 0 income and $626,000 of expenses with no receipts and no documentation. That's something that could be construed as tax fraud. During the hearing, which lasted 2 days, the CPA and lawyer who had done Trump's tax returns for years was shown the tax return, and he said, well, that's my signature, but I didn't prepare that tax return. Now, it was a photocopy.
What is your tax rate?
It's none of your business. You'll see it when I release. But I fight very hard to pay as little tax as possible.
David K. Johnston.
Well, I think that tells you the way he snapped at the question that Donald has no intention of ever producing his tax returns. If he's elected president, he won't do so. Donald's most famous building, the Trump Tower, instead of building it as a steel girder building, he chose to build it out of concrete, a 58-story, he says 68 stories, a 58-story concrete building built by a company called A&S Construction. And who owned A&S Construction? Fat Tony Salerno, the head of the Genovese crime family in New York, and Paul Castellano, the head of the Gambino family. And in addition, Donald Trump has been found in the past repeatedly to have not paid people he owed money to. It is a standard business practice of his. He has let people think that he fixed Woolman Rink in Central Park for free. He was paid $10 million, but some of his contractors were never paid because he told them this was a public service project. And he's been sued innumerable times for racial discrimination at his businesses. He's been found to have engaged in racial discrimination. He's not at all who he appears to be.
He's had over 520 companies. He's had 4 bankruptcies. That's less than 1%. That's a pretty damn good batting average.
So you think he's a good businessman?
Yes, I do. He's only done what the laws of the country have allowed him to do.
Why are people taking him to court all the time if he's only doing what the laws of the country allow him to do? As David K. Johnston and other reporters have highlighted, Trump has been sued numerous times for not paying employees. This is obviously not something the laws of the country allow you to do.
He doesn't pay federal income tax. That's why he won't release his federal tax returns. Something I know a little bit about. When you're in real estate, there's a million loopholes. My people are so smart. And you know what else they say about my people? The polls. They say, I have the most loyal people. Did you ever see that? Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
What do you think of Trump saying that he could kill somebody in the street and his supporters would be fine with it and he'd get away with it?
Probably true.
Probably true.
Essentially killed American civil liberties, what he says, so.
He is the most narcissistic person in a truly narcissistic profession. So you have a job that actually requires someone to promote himself or herself relentlessly. And Donald is relentless when it comes to self-promotion. History has given us previous leaders who have been sociopathic. So the idea that one would arise today is not entirely shocking. The whole world has become a television show, and Donald is a television performer first and foremost. The claims that he makes and the statements that he makes that are sexist and racist and misogynistic, those are things that I think people, at least some people, secretly thrill to. They like the idea that someone would say something that is forceful, perhaps even a little bit bigoted, or perhaps a lot bigoted, because they see power in this display and they see what they might imagine to be courage.
Why do you support Donald Trump?
I think he speaks his mind, and I think he's honest about what he means, and he's a smart businessman.
Why do you support Donald Trump?
Because he's not unlike any other politician, and he's not a politician.
So why do you support Donald Trump?
Donald Trump has made a connection with the middle-class people in this country. He cares about our veterans. He cares about the future of this country, and that's basically it. He's a non-politician, doesn't need the job, but he wants the job. He speaks with the angst we feel.
He's not a politician, he's a businessman, and he doesn't need our money. He's got his own money, so he doesn't need to steal our damn money.
Over and over, we heard the line, "He's a businessman, not a politician." What Americans see as the problem with politicians is exactly what Trump has done his whole business life. Use political connections to make his money.
I contribute to I've given to Democrats. I've given to Hillary. I've given to everybody because that was my job. I got to give to them because when I want something, I get it. When I call, they kiss my ass. Okay, it's true. They kiss my ass.
No matter how dishonest Trump is, his supporters remain loyal and continue to regard him as the only honest man in politics.
I support Donald Trump because right off the bat, he was the only one that was real in the whole on the whole Republican side of the first Republican debate, and he's not reading a teleprompter.
He's the only one that has the values. He loves America and he's giving back. When he started out, he wasn't bought by anybody. He used his own money. People say, oh, it's because he's a billionaire or whatever. And it's so ridiculous. It's, he didn't need to do this. He had his own money, and if he just wanted to protect himself or whatever else, he could have gone someplace else and lived with tons of security around himself. But he loves America, and he wants to give back. He wants to give back to the people of America and make it safe for his grandchildren and everything else. That's why I'm out here, is I want to make it safe for my daughter, for my grandchildren, and that's why I'm voting for Trump.
Donald Trump is an alpha male, okay? A lot of things he says, I think he's got a method to his madness, and he's kind of striking back at people that have attacked him at times just to say, don't play those games with me. I don't have a problem. I don't have a thin skin. I'm not a liberal that wears my heart on my sleeve. I think we need to tough it up. This is a big boys game.
I think also the fact that in order to get votes, he keeps escalating his rhetoric, and people begin to believe it. And so the more crazy, outlandish things he says to get votes, the more crazy, outlandish people come out of the woodwork and start doing hateful things.
The point that I'm trying to make, and I think ought to be made, is that the real, at least to me, I say this elsewhere in the book, what seems to me a very, in a sense, terrifying aspect of our society and other societies is the equanimity and the detachment with which sane, reasonable, sensible people can observe such events. I think that's more terrifying than the occasional Hitler or LeMay or other that crops up. These people would not be able to operate were it not for this apathy and equanimity. And therefore I think that it's, in some sense, the sane and reasonable and tolerant people who share a very serious burden of guilt that they very easily throw on the shoulders of others who seem more extreme.
And here's Hitler, who has more votes by this time than anybody else. He's up to 37%. He never gets a majority, but he's up to 37%. And they want to bring that into their tent and get a solid mass backing. And so they co-opt Hitler.
I mean, citizens in general got to be proactive in preventing this kind of stuff. Otherwise, it gets to where we are here, which is, I can't even begin to express the disbelief that I have that somebody that says this kind of things has the support that he does and is in a place like this.
Hitler, like I say on the other side of the sign, wasn't Hitler until he came into power and did all the awful things that he did. And Donald Trump doesn't have any political power yet, but he very well could. And a lot of bad things could happen if that were the case. So I'm just trying to make my voice heard, you know, the little way that I can.
No, one thing a lot of Trump supporters and even regular people and even Trump protesters have said when asked, is Trump a fascist? They'll say that, well, he hasn't killed 12 million people.
Right. Not yet. And I don't think that's going to happen again. But there's a lot of horrible things he could do short of that. And we do have to remember that Hitler killed 12 million people in the Holocaust, 6 million Jews and 6 million others. And, you know, at first the German populace thought he was a joke, and they didn't think he was fit to serve. A lot of the same things that people are saying about Donald Trump right now. If his ideas come to fruition, there's no telling what could go through our political system and the horrors that could occur. Not just to the Jews, like in the Holocaust, but to all types of minorities here in America.
Do you see any parallels between the historic rise of fascism and the way the Republican establishment is giving in to Donald Trump now, the Never Trump movement now having been defeated?
Exactly. At first, it's never this, never that, and then you get bullied long enough, and I guess the Republican Party felt like they'd been bullied long enough by Donald Trump, and they just cowered.
I think a lot of what he's doing is he's getting a lot of shock value. He's trying to definitely stir a lot of people who haven't voted before by just saying stuff that they're just like, you know what? I've never heard that. I'm going to go out and vote. But so I think he's a true fascist. No, I think he's playing this like a business. He's making moves that he specifically knows will target and get the results that he wants.
I think that's retarded. I think that's pretty stupid and racist, to be honest. I think there's plenty of people that are Muslim that aren't a threat to us anyway. I think I have 3 Arabian uncles who are Muslims that are married to my aunts, and one of them is the coolest guy I ever met. You know what I mean? He's great. He's a great father to his kids. They got 6 kids together. He's an amazing father. He's good to my aunt. There's bad white people, there's bad black people, there's bad Muslims, there's bad Mexicans. It's not a race thing, it's a people thing. Everybody's different. There's nothing you're going to be able to do to change that. The build the wall thing I think is completely retarded. I think that's pretty dumb. But whatever, that's his slogan, he can go with it.
Do you think Mexicans and Muslims should be nervous or afraid of a Trump presidency?
I don't think they should. I don't think he's going to follow through as much on everything that he's promising. I think it's more or less just to get these, bikers and hillbillies riled up and they vote for him. I think that's what he's hoping for, is for racist people to vote for him. He's just trying to get more votes, buddy. That's the way I see it. I think Trump's a smart businessman. I think he can do things for our country that haven't been done in a while.
After speaking with some Trump supporters, we discovered that many see just how dangerous his ideas are, but they nonetheless support him. This sort of acquiescing to hateful rhetoric and policy proposals has many well-known historical precedents.
So for me, this is terrifying, right? This whole election season, Trump is a real threat to American democracy, a threat to the world, and I'm here to stand up against it. If people would have stood up to Hitler in Weimar Germany, he wouldn't have come to power, and I see it as a similar situation now. If people stand up to Trump, he won't be elected, he won't come into power, the threat will pass.
A lot of people think, well, he's not that dangerous because he's ridiculous. It's just the opposite. I've spent many, many years confronting, dealing with, fighting against fascists, mass murderers who are supported by the U.S. government in many countries around the world. People like Salvador Alarcón and Sandoval Alarcón in Guatemala, D'Aubuisson in El Salvador, Rios Montt in Guatemala, Prabowo in Indonesia. And among them, these guys kill hundreds of thousands of people. So on a certain level, it's unfair to compare them to Trump, because Trump is a lightweight by comparison. But one thing about a lot of these fascist types is that they had trouble getting popular support because they were so scary, because they were such frightening figures. I mean, when I talk to them, you could see it in their eyes, and people could see it in their eyes. Few of them could stand up and hope to win an actual election. But some of them have the gift of, in addition to the authoritarianism and the willingness to kill en masse, the gift of being a clown, of being ridiculous.
Donald, I want to ask you, because the next time I see you, you could be the President of the United States. I just wanted to know if there's something we could do that's just not presidential, really, or something that we can do now that we're just both civilians. Like
what? This is... I'm not liking the sound of this. Go ahead.
Someone like Duterte in the Philippines has that. He just won on a death squad platform. He promised mass death squad killings across the country. He won overwhelmingly. He's carrying it out. He's already killed thousands. And he has a very high approval rating. Trump seems so ridiculous that people kind of say, well, you know, what harm could he do?
Can I mess your hair up? I'm being gentle. I'm being gentle.
So, as long...
That was, you know, not to go too far with the comparison, but that was a factor with Hitler. That was one reason why until it was too late, Hitler was not taken seriously as a threat, notably by many on the left in Germany who failed to stand up to him early enough. And he also lulled in many in the establishment, many among the rich and the military, who thought, well, they could manage him. You know, the establishment will prevail in the end. Trump's clownishness is in a way of strength because it diverts attention from the noxious things he's talking about.
Go ahead with my hairspray.
I'll do it as well.
We found there are some voters supporting Trump, not because they like the candidate, not because they like his platform, but because they are so sick of the establishment that they just want to burn it down.
So why do you support Donald Trump?
My reason's a little bit, I guess, different. So every year in all the elections, we just keep, I see that we just keep getting worse and worse and worse. So Donald's kind of like my reset button, where eventually people are going to be like, wow, we fucked up. And then maybe after that we can start getting back to normal. So yeah, I view goodness coming with a little bit of pain, but oftentimes we need pain to learn our lessons.
So it's not so much that Donald would make a great president, it's that he would instigate great change.
It's a more intellectual way of saying it, sure. I don't think that either of the choices right now, or any of the people who were running, would have been good choices either. I mean, Ted Cruz made a video of him cooking bacon on a machine gun, which I didn't really see as being relevant to anything. But yeah, Hillary's going to screw us either with taxes or being really slimy. Donald's just my reset button.
I've been trying to say for months here, I live in Michigan, and across the Midwest, across the Rust Belt, I understand why a lot of people are angry, and they see Donald Trump as their human Molotov cocktail that they get to go into the voting booth on November 8th and throw him into a political system that has made their lives miserable. Trump is not just comedy to me. I think that people see that he is maybe their messenger, even though they don't necessarily like him or agree with him so much. I think that they love the idea of blowing up the system.
Do you think every time a newspaper editorial comes out and denounces Trump, and every time a former cabinet secretary in a Bush administration comes out and denounces Trump, do you think that backfires? Do you think it oddly reinforces Trump's message?
I think a lot of people who have seen their livelihood vaporize, who are no longer part of the middle class, who are struggling to survive, pay no attention anymore to what the media or the people in power, they've lost all credibility.
If you look at the other presidents in the past who have promised a lot of things, they're not able to always follow through with them. Like
how Obama promised change in so many ways. He had a Republican-controlled Senate and Congress for a large part of his presidency, which didn't allow him to follow through with a lot of things that he promised. But then again, if he does become president, he just might have a Republican Congress and Senate if things don't change in our country soon. So he might just be able to do some of the things he promised. So we'll see what happens.
Do you think Donald Trump will try to actually implement his policies?
I think he, in his mind, if he can find it, I think he might actually try to do this. I think Donald Trump needs to quit listening to himself and listening to advisors. That's why he got a secretary of this and a secretary of that. But he's already said he knows more about the issues than anybody else, okay? So I believe Donald Trump will get us in a lot of trouble. And that's about as political as I'm going to get. Donald Trump needs to quit taking himself so serious and understand that what he's trying to do is become the most powerful man in the world, not the most powerful man in business. If y'all want to hear some more about what I got to say, Google Stickman, Cleveland, Ohio, or you can find me on Facebook under Stickman. Got it? Good.
The only thing is, we have the 3 departments of government, and that would be the only thing to save us. He can't just arbitrarily do certain things, but still, if he's got the backers, it's scary. It's really, really scary. It was funny at first, and then it became a little serious, and now it's downright scary. When I see some of these people, the anger, I've never seen such anger as I've seen today on the faces of some of these Trump supporters. I mean, their veins sticking out, their faces just turn bright red and they're screaming. And you're like, wow, come on, if you want to have a conversation, I'll do that, but you look like you're going to explode.
And do you think Trump could seize extra presidential powers in the wake of any sort of new terrorist attack?
Oh, absolutely. In the case of a terrorist attack, look at what we've done in the past. We've interned Japanese American citizens. We have rounded up countless Muslims in America after 9/11. No one wants to talk about it, but it happened. And those people still, many of them, are on no-fly lists for no reason. So there is plenty of leeway that the American people would give him if there were to be a new terrorist attack, and that's scary to think of. And I'm sure Congress would support him because we rally behind our leaders, and I'm sure the judges in our judiciary system in that case would be very lenient in his favor, in the president's favor, when there is a national security threat to America.
Well, we don't know what Donald Trump would do if he were elected president. He's a thoroughly self-centered and aggressive personality. The danger, it seems to me, is that in a deadlock between Trump and the Congress or Trump and the courts, he would indeed take some kind of non-constitutional action, and people would be afraid to say no.
I mean, I think that Donald Trump himself is a dangerous neo-fascist in the making.
Oh, stop it.
And you know what I mean by that? You know what I mean by that?
Neo-fascist. You just throw out these words. Stop
it's true. It's true. Because you know what neo-fascism is?
He's a nationalist and he's populist. And he's with conservative leanings. That's not a fascist.
Autocratic sensibility. With the Muslims, the Mexicans, and not only that, look what he said about the press.
Well, what's happened in the last few months, maybe it was latent, you could call it whatever you want, but it's perfectly plain now. I called it proto-fascism. I'm very comfortable with that because
I noticed.
You look at the combination: xenophobia, racism, encouraging violence among his supporters, militarism. He didn't get a lot of attention the other day when he said, let's go into the Middle East, clean out ISIS, and we'll be back really quickly. That was his framing. We've heard that from militarist leaders for generations. The boys will be home by Christmas. So all the component parts are there.
In general, I'm very leery of the use of the term too casually, and I do see great differences between Trump and fascism.
Well, let me ask you about the violence at the Trump rallies.
Yes.
You've got March 9th, a black protester sucker punched, and then February 29th, a photographer slammed on the ground. November 21st, a black protester punch-kicked, briefly choked. October 23rd, a Latino protester kicked. October 14th, immigration activists are shoved, they're spit on. Donald Trump talks about paying the legal fees of those who are brought up on charges, most recently the man who sucker punched the African-American protester, and then afterwards said into a camera of Inside Edition, next time I would kill him. And Donald Trump has offered to pay his legal fees.
Well, Donald Trump's pandering to the hatreds and violent instincts of some of these crowds is very alarming. But I think in a longer perspective we've had greater acts of violence than this during the civil rights campaign. People were shot, dogs were put on them, fire hoses were put on them, people were killed in the civil rights campaigns. And this is relatively small potatoes. I think it reveals a man of violent temperament and a dangerous person, but I think it's still on a relatively small scale. Mussolini and Hitler fought in the streets with the socialists and the communists, and they were dead. There were a few dead in Germany. There were actually more dead in Italy when Mussolini was sort of conquering the streets with his black shirts. That's real political violence. If Donald Trump puts his followers in colored shirts and they begin to fight in the streets, then you've got fascism.
Before the election is absolutely absurd.
So do you think Trump is a fascist? Is his movement a fascist movement?
Well, I do believe he is. I don't think the particular label fascist is important as the question, is Trump too fascist? Is he too fascist for people to ignore, to not protest against, vote against, take to the streets? Is he too dangerous for the American public and the world to be comfortable with? Yes, absolutely.
So we're not calling every Trump supporter that we interviewed a fascist. In fact, some were very nice people. They're just simply misguided.
What we found in Cleveland are that there are two kinds of Trump supporters. There's the stereotypical kind, and then there are regular people who are willing to vote for Trump because they have legitimate issues and they believe he is the one who can solve those problems, however misinformed they may be about that. We want to stress that both kinds exist. There are racist, bigoted, fascistic Trump supporters, and there are regular people ready to vote for Trump on November 8th. And despite his enormous, significant drop in the polls recently, there is still the chance that he can win this election because of the regular people who are willing to vote for him.
On the last day of the RNC, we attended a march by the largest anti-Trump group in Cleveland, Stand Together Against Trump, or STAT.
In many ways right now the world is hanging by a thread. We all feel it. Trump is trying to use this moment to divide us. He's trying to use this moment to gain personal power, and we have to stand together against him. If we don't do it now, in 3 months it will be too late. So this moment, tonight, at Public Square, let's stand together.
While we may not be Americans and we can't cast a ballot in this election, as citizens of the world, we are deeply concerned by the prospect of a Trump presidency. With Trump at the helm of the United States, the most powerful country in the world, economically and militarily, there is no telling what kind of global damage he could wreak. Whether Trump wins the election and takes power or not makes a tremendous difference. But even if he loses, it is absolutely astounding that he came this close. Trump and his movement are alarmingly fascist. In just about every defining characteristic of fascism, they fit the bill. Polling for Trump's Muslim ban this year among likely Republican voters has been as high as 65%. But after the Orlando shooting, an NBC SurveyMonkey poll showed that support for the ban was at 50% among all Americans, with disapproval at 46%. Let that sink in for a moment. In this poll, half of Americans
just 1% shy of a majority, said they support banning a religion of 1.6 billion people from entering the country. If Muslims should not be allowed to enter the U.S., why keep any in? And how to deal with them if they don't want to leave? How to deal with political opponents who advocate for the rights of people of all faiths and ethnicities? The Trump movement has terrifying answers to these questions. If there are any parallels between the Trump movement and historical fascist movements, just remember how those movements ended. Even if Trump loses, this movement is not going away. It may continue under Trump as he contests a Clinton victory and encourages violence in response to it, or this movement may find a new strongman to carry its banner of hate. We said we left out fraudulent elections, but now we actually need to highlight this aspect of fascism. And perhaps the greatest irony of the 2016 presidential campaign, Trump, who has repeated for months that the election will be rigged against him and his followers, has demonstrated his complete disregard for and despise of the electoral process.
One of the prides of this country is the peaceful transition of power, and that no matter how hard fought a campaign is, that at the end of the campaign, that the loser concedes to the winner, not saying that you're necessarily going to be the loser or the winner, but that the loser concedes to the winner and that the country comes together in part for the good of the country. Are you saying you're not prepared now to commit to that principle?
What I'm saying is that I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
And you've got to get everybody you know. And you got to watch your polling booths, because I hear too many stories about Pennsylvania, certain areas. I hear too many bad stories, and we can't lose an election because of you know what I'm talking about. So go and vote, and then go check out areas, because a lot of bad things happen, and we don't want to lose for that reason. We don't want to lose, but we don't want to lose for that reason. So go over and watch carefully.
He has encouraged his often armed supporters to intimidate rival voters by watching them on Election Day.
We're not pulling out, and I'm going to stand my ground, and I'm going to speak out for what I believe in, and I guess I would encourage everyone else to do the same.
And he has deliberately fanned the flames of violence against his political opponent.
Hillary wants to essentially abolish the Second Amendment. By the way, and if she gets to pick her judges, nothing you can do, folks. Although the Second Amendment people, maybe there is, I don't know.
How are you feeling right now about where things stand with the campaign?
I feel like Hillary needs to be taken out. If she gets into government, I'll do everything in my power to take her out of power, which if I have to be a patriot, I will.
What does that mean?
Take it any way you want to take it.
I mean, that sounds like a threat.
You think a patriot is.
Is that a physical threat?
I don't know, is it? I won't have to myself. Well, there's going to be probably a movement to where we will go and take them out of power.
But it sounds like you're saying that it would be acceptable to assassinate a president.
If she's corrupt, why should she be able to stay in office? Answer that question.
Remember, assassinating one's political opponent is the last thing democracy looks like.
Show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Tell me what democracy sounds like. This is what democracy sounds like. Show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. This is why love Trump hates. Love Trump